Hello and welcome to Warcraft Daily for today, the 2nd of December 2013. So in today's news we have three main things. The first one is some of the completion rates for the expansion and all the different PvE content. It's actually quite interesting. Then we have some tweets from Celestalon, who is really becoming one of my favourite blues. The guy is amazing on Twitter, gets to so many questions and gives us so many great responses. And then finally, we are going to cover some of the things Ghostcrawler has said about him leaving, and it's actually kind of interesting hearing the guy. So first of all, the percentage completion rate. Now this does come via MMO Champions, so thank you to them for doing whatever technical wizardry they needed to do to analyze all the armory profiles, but it comes from a sample of 7.6 million characters from 2.9 million accounts, and they said that the sample is slightly biased, as players who are not in a guild are much less likely to appear in their sample. So in terms of what it shows, well, it's the average, the absolute completion rate for the polled people of essentially all of the different content, all the different PvE content that has an achievement associated with it. And, well, let's just go through the graph. So Sha of Anger is 72%, Galleon 57%, Mogushan Vault 74%, Heart of Fear 67%, Terrace of the Endless Spring 63%, Nalak is 60%, Undasta is 46%, Throne of Thunder Wing 1 is 66%, Throne of Thunder Wing 4 is 53%, so not that much drop off there, interestingly enough. All of the Celestials is 27%, Ordos is 11%, Siege of Orgrimmar Wing 1 is 40%, Siege of Orgrimmar Wing 2 is 30%, Wing 3 is 19%, and Wing 4 is a paltry 11%, and then the Glory of the Siege of Orgrimmar Raider, or whatever it's called, is 0.36%, so not that many people have done that, but this is, all in all, kind of interesting. So with 5.4, we do see a definite decrease. Now, of course, this patch has only been out for 2.5 months, so there's still plenty of time to go, and I guess that this is really what we should expect from the final patch of the expansion. That said, there hasn't been a giant decline or anything. We only lost 100k in this patch, well, in sort of the period leading up to this, so the game's kind of healthy, and I suppose those numbers are healthy because you need to think that when you take PvPers and people who do non-raid content into the equation here, well, perhaps, you know, there's, that means that the actual percentage of PvE people who've got through this content is pretty good. Also, for that older content, just do bear in mind, it's people have had, like, a year to do some of that stuff. So, yeah, overall, I think that's interesting enough. Of course, it's only 2.9 million out of 7.6 million players, so it's not everybody, but that's definitely, it's a sample size that I would call statistically significant anyway. It's pretty damn big. Overall, I don't think there's really a giant deal to take out of this, other than Siege of Orgrimmar really does seem to drop down fast. I guess some of the early issues with LFR may have put a lot of people off, and I actually think that a lot of the LFR player base, I think a lot of them just got really pissed off with Wing 1 and Wing 2. I think it was mainly Wing 2 actually, because it had some balance issues or something like that at the start. I think it was with General Nazgrim and perhaps Kor'kron Dark Shaman. That said, I didn't find any of the LFRs really that fun, and as you can see, the only time I actually did those LFRs was for the guide videos that I did on them, and because I went in 15 minutes after the reset, after the servers came up, I got a group of normal geared raiders every time, whereas people having to do this with normal LFR gear, it must be, I don't know, it mustn't be that fun. Now, in terms of raid content participation, they said the normal is still strong, heroic is still strong, but what's really surprised them is that how popular flex has been, and that is probably one of the main reasons why they're going to be applying the flexible scaling to normal mode, or at least what we call currently normal mode in Worlds of Draenor. So I think that's overall kind of good stuff. Raiding and all that's probably quite healthy at the minute. Now, next up, let's just talk about some of the more kind of game design-ish class balance issues, and this is from Celestalon, who is one of the new blues. He's a part of the team that Ghostcrawler headed up, and he has a lot of great insight, and I think one of the best things is that he just puts out so many tweets. It was like 4 or 5 pages of Twitter all at once, like in a 1 hour period. It was crazy. But the nice thing about this is that people like me have got lots of stuff to talk about. Anyway, so first of all, he said some of the level 100 talents have already been replaced, and many of them have been modified, so that's the ones that they showed off at BlizzCon. If you want to see what they are, I do have a video on it, but of course, since a lot of them are being replaced and modified, it doesn't mean a great deal. They said that those talents were really just put there to give people a flavour of what they were going for in terms of talent design, and the general flavour was to give people different ways and different things for their class. in a way that didn't contribute to button bloat, and I think they did a very good job. At least things were interesting. Some people were saying, oh, this isn't balanced, that isn't balanced. Well, the numbers are not done yet, that's why those things weren't balanced, and overall I think that there's just some very interesting talents in there. A good example, actually, is there's one for the Hunter where you do 30% more damage when you don't have a pet. So it's a petless Hunter one. There's a DPS Prot Warrior one. I just think it's really cool. And the more things like that they do, I suppose World of Warcraft has lost a little bit of its class uniqueness as we went on, and I think this would do a good job of perhaps reintroducing some of that in a way that doesn't contribute to button bloat, and at least allows them to have a good deal of control when it comes to balance. So next, he talked about wanting more active DPS and healing rather than just passive, and personally I think this is fair enough. It makes decision making more important and makes the control of the game feel more direct. The main thing this was in regards to was smart heals. He said that they actually want less smart heals. Now, I think one of the things about smart heals, right now, there's some things where you absolutely need smart heals. If there's giant amounts of boss damage coming out, then yeah, smart heals could be needed. But I think perhaps for some other things, they want to add, sort of reintroduce that element of decision making, make it a little bit more prominent than it has been. And that said, of course, from all the healers that I know, there is still a lot of skill in healing and making the correct decisions that you need to make, but I suppose they just want to reintroduce this sort of thing. I wonder if this will have any bearing on boss encounters. I doubt it would, but maybe for some of those like really heavy AoE things, they'll make that, I suppose, so that it doesn't require smart heals. There are definitely some things in the game at the minute that nearly require smart heals because of the way they're designed. So yeah, I suppose the problem with them is that a part of it is the game making decisions for you, and that's usually not always a good thing in game design, but of course when it's necessary it should be there. Now, next of all, for secondary stats, he said that the secondary stats bar Spirit will all have defensive values for tanks, so this includes things like multi-strike. Now, multi-strike is that you have a percentage chance of the damage from an attack to apply again, but only at 30% of its value. So, say if you were like, I don't know, like it was one of those attacks where you use the attack and you gain like 5 chi or 3 chi or something like that. You wouldn't gain double the amount of the resource, but the damage would be applied an extra time at 30%. So I think that's interesting, and I don't know how they're going to tie things like this in for tanks. I suppose for healers it will just be you get a second mini heal on targets, and I think that could be quite cool, you know, if you do a big, like a really large heal, and oh, you know, it's nice, you get your heal like ticks off again or something. I think that's really fun gameplay for healers. Of course, for DPS people, we love it because we get to see more numbers, and that's really all we want at the end of the day. And for tanks, well, I don't really know how multi-strike would work. Like, it is like a bespoke damage thing, so perhaps for tanks it does something different. I don't know, but I think they can do cool stuff with it. Next, for Seal of Faith. This is one of the really interesting talents that was shown off at BlizzCon, and they said that this is something they're still working on, but they like the idea. Here's the talent text for it. Fills you with holy light, causing you to gain faith equal to all damage dealt. Faith acts as spell power towards your next healing spell that you cast. And for holy players, while Seal of Faith is active, your damage done is increased by 30%. Now this is rather interesting. This means that there is, I suppose, a semi-Shockedin coming back. Now if you don't know what a Shockedin was, way back in the day of, say, Wrath of the Lich King, or perhaps even the Burning Crusade, there was this, well, there's an ability that's still in the game called Holy Shock for Paladins, and a lot of people would do this really strange hybrid spec in which it would all be specking towards your Holy Shock doing more damage, which was really cool because of this. You had this like Paladin which had a really sort of nice, snappy, powerful ranged attack. The problem was it wasn't very good, and the people who spec'd into that were completely gimped. They couldn't play any endgame content and be taken seriously, but to a lot of people it was fun, so they did it anyway. This would essentially allow a style like a Shockedin to come back, which is kind of cool, and it's nice that Celestalon said, yeah, we could do this. Now there's also something similar for Prot. It's, what's it called? I'm not too sure about the name, but essentially it's a new stance, and I think you do extra damage. I'm not too sure on the specifics, and I think your shield bash or something will soak up a stack of some shield buff that you have to do extra damage. Essentially it's like a half and half tank DPS sort of thing, and this Seal of Faith deal is a half and half healer DPS. Now, one of the things that I like about this is that perhaps it's a way they can introduce more class diversity into the game. And this sounds like the sort of thing that Ghostcrawler wouldn't really have, like, spearheaded. I know that sounds weird, and I am 100% sure this has nothing to do with him leaving, but I think it's probably more the thing that his team came up with this at a point where the whole design of the game was evolving, and they perhaps thought they could add stuff like this in. It's nice. A little bit less homogenization, I suppose, is always a good thing as long as they can keep it balanced, and I certainly do think they can keep this balanced. That, by the way, don't take that as me putting a dig in at Ghostcrawler. A lot of things he did at the time were really necessary for keeping the game balanced, because sometimes it was a little bit ridiculous, but I actually really like this idea of, well, even in, like, Hunters having a petless spec, or Holy being able to do some damage. I think that stuff's all really cool. And finally, he said that haste will not affect the duration of damage over time spells. Yeah, take that for what you will. Now, finally, we're going to talk about Ghostcrawler and him talking about leaving the development team. First of all, he said he's not quitting the game, he's just not designing it anymore. And one of the really interesting things, he was talking about, like, games degrees and things like that. And what he said is that he's been in the business for 16 years, and look at the developers you admire. How many of them have degrees in game design? 0. And that's mainly because 15 years ago, hardly any places did degrees like that were worth a grain of salt. And Ghostcrawler himself has a PhD in marine biology. Now, this is actually kind of related to me. My degree is games related, but it's not design, it's all programming, it's essentially code and maths, and we do similar stuff to the other people who do computer science and software engineering, but we take some more advanced modules to do with mathsy things, which should be really fun because I need to learn lots of maths in between now and then. But I suppose the main question here is, can design be taught? I'm of the opinion that design cannot be taught. I think that you're either going to be a good designer who can be made better, or you're just not cut out for design. And that's fine, not everyone is able to do everything. There's some people who are, like, you know, fantastic programmers, not a good designer, or a great designer couldn't do code for crap, or a great artist couldn't do anything else. But they all have their place in the industry. So I think that's interesting, and he ultimately said that he thinks that a game design degree is a good thing. What I would say though, like, do what you want, obviously, but if you don't think design's for you, then don't shoehorn yourself into it, because, well, maybe there's other aspects that could suit you better, like programming or things like that. Still, it is interesting. This whole thing about people growing up and being educated and taught how to design a game, that's not something that used to happen. It's funny, I wonder if in like 30 years it'll become like the film studies of today, where it's one of those degrees where a lot of people do it because it's a passion project, but it's quite hard to get a job with. Of course, a lot of people end up using those skills in other things, but I mean, yeah, it's all interesting. I'm still happy about the course I do, because if I don't go into the games industry, I can always go and work for Microsoft or Liberty IT or some group like that. That said, if I couldn't get into games, I'd probably do YouTube full-time and just find a way of making it work, because this is way too interesting and fun. Yeah, so there you go, you guys make it. Anyway, next, let's continue. He said that we won't be yet finding out anything about his future plans, but he did say that he is leaving the team confident that Warlords will be fantastic and that it's in good hands, and he said that it will be savage and epic, so that should be your quota of savage epicness fulfilled, I suppose. All good, I guess. He did say, what was it that he said? Yes, he did say, do you remember back in patch 5.4, there was a thing where Ghostcrawler had an unannounced feature, and he actually had 2. He did say, we are probably going to find out what it is, but he is not allowed to say. So he's going to leave us on a cliffhanger. Finally, also he said, do not expect too many changes because that he left. He was only a part of a team, and it's all consensus and collaboration. On a project that large, it kind of has to be, so yeah, I wouldn't really expect massive sweeping changes. It's not like the interns going to be like, okay, Ghostcrawler is gone, let's do all the changes we wanted to do, and then the interns take over and the game goes to shit. That won't happen. Next up, he said that he is still going to stick to Twitter, but his insights might not be as valuable. I think they're still going to be valuable given his experience. Hell, even like screw World of Warcraft, given that he was heavily involved in Age of Empires 2, I think I'd still listen to him just solely based on that and how sort of fantastic a game it was for the time. It doesn't age fantastically, but still a great game. And finally, he dropped the knowledge bomb that he plays a holy priest. So there you go. All those people that thought that Warlocks were overpowered because Ghostcrawler plays one, you are probably wrong. And oh, I should say on the topic of Warlocks being overpowered, before all the Warlocks revolt and, I don't know, flame my channel, Celestalon actually said in a tweet about 2 days ago, do not compare yourself to a Warlock because they are flat out overpowered at the high level. So hey, there you go. If you are comparing yourself to those top 100 Warlock parses, you're doing it wrong. And plus, it's not very good for your self-esteem anyway. I used to do that, and it was impossible. Anyway, that's it for today's show. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. If you have any questions for the Q&A or responses to things in the video, leave them in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.